Greetings, it's July 1st. This is the Mork Orc Diaries, and I'm here to discuss a variety of topics. Let's see how far my voice can hold out. It's a never-ending struggle that I need to go to a doctor and figure out, but still keep putting it off. So, today we're going to deal with all sorts of different things. I'm going to talk about the Cold Civil War, economic superpowers, machines. Let's start with the LouisIAna Renaissance. That's something that I've been working on since I just uncovered a piece that is based on ideas that I had and some things that happened to me back when I was learning to be a writer. And I came up with the idea for a LouisIAna Renaissance. This was in the 90s, back when I was still surrounded by people. Not that that's part of the stories it deals with. I was surrounded by a lot of people. I was trying to manage bands. I had a lot of friends, but I couldn't find anybody that was motivated or that really had any sort of. Everybody was going to school to get a job, but there was not. I just couldn't find any entrepreneurial spirit or anything like that. And so the LouisIAna Renaissance was an idea I had to try, and I've embellished upon it. I've grown. The idea has grown, and it's resurfaced recently. So it deals with my idea. Back then, when I was managing bands, I had the idea, let's try to start a music movement, kind of like Seattle with the grunge, and Athens had a bunch of major bands that came out of Athens. So I was like, let's do something with New Orleans with the jazz and the funk, the sound that's so indicative. And Galactic was just starting to take off. And there were several other bands that I thought had the potential to really turn into national. I was looking to create some mainstream success with, and then really try to bring about the jazz movement and things like that, and things like and so the Renaissance was all part of this idea that the musicians and the bands that would launch from Louisiana would then elevate a whole group of artists and filmmakers and writers. The whole purpose being, or one of the purposes being, is I'll go back. Had talked recently. I've come up with the idea of let's try to do something about the evolution of jazz and all the things that it's influenced. And there's so much that jazz, especially any kind of band that has any sort of jazz riff jam going on, or it really is amazing how many bands are influenced by jazz, especially jazz fusion, acid jazz, and all that in the modern context. And I thought it was just too complicated for the modern mainstream markets, but I was trying to, hoping to try to elevate some bands to this modern, modern mainstream movement with the evolution of jazz as the idea. So the evolution of Louisiana was part of it. I thought me being a writer at the time was trying to come up with ideas to launch my career because it's so difficult being unless you're connected in the industry. So if we could launch a renaissance and evolution in Louisiana, plus religions and political parties kind of work together to keep minds small. They don't want them to think too deeply. They want them to think small in order to be able to manipulate and control them. I was looking to evolve the masses to a more big picture perspective, come up with some big picture plans and ideas to try to elevate the state and take it in a certain direction. Because, in my estimation, it has the potential to be a global power player if it utilizes its global resources at its fingertips. And if it doesn't, it's going to be mediocrity at best. because it just can't compete with Texas. I mean, it's strong for the South, but the South is lagging behind most of the country. So um, it's really trying to turn it into something that would be a global power player using global assets, tapping into Latin American markets and European contacts and things like that. That was my idea, to turn Louisiana into a global power player. And the whole Renaissance would be a transition to try to work towards that. So that was my idea with that. And it's still underway, and I get zero support. I'm stuck here in Savannah. It was almost as if my life was, I was raised to be a zoo captive, and there is a Caldwell Zoo, and it seems like I was led astray and trapped and hunted and butchered. It was like a slaughterhouse, an abattoir, going through the different, or the Rube Goldberg mousetrap sort of thing. And there were life hacks to make me smaller and alienate me and things like that. Or these are just reasons that I've come up with, because I've made a concerted effort to try to meet people, and I've just been alienated since about 2001. I don't know if it was the 9/11 attacks when we went to war on terror, and then they saw me as a terror threat because of the Red Scare, Red Dawn sort of mentality. And I don't know what it is, but I was alienated in Jackson Hole. I was alienated in Aspen, and I've been alienated here in Savannah. Savannah seems like it's the culmination. I think the Texas was doing the butchering, and Savannah is where I was supposed to hang on the trophy wall. And I think they're going to try to justify it as free religion, which is the stupidest thing. And I'm not willing to devote my life to this, because what it is there's a war between the Protestants and the Catholics, and this is and the Protestant Dixie Mafia and the Catholic Italian Mafia, and the Dixie Mafia wanted to show how much smarter it was and more advanced it was than the Italian Mafia, and our family's case and my theoretical estimation had to do with that. So, yeah, just so I was totally alienated. I have been, and I've got tons of plans. I couldn't network, social network. It's the book of the Social Climber's Bible. I couldn't social climb or anything. I was never invited to parties to meet people or anything like this. And that's the way you get anywhere in this world, especially in uh, arts and entertainment or anything like that. You really need to network. So I was unable to get anything done. And motives and reasons, there's a lot of them. The Omega tattoo hack, there's the Bush League, Junior Varsity, J.R. Ewing and then it's all about these rank hierarchies. Title IX and St. Louis IX, King of France, pride scalping. It's really an interesting conundrum of theories I've come up with, just because there has to be some reasonable explanation, and this isn't reasonable. It's a bizarre conundrum. So I come up with theories as to why, and it's just really a strange sort of thing. But I'll never understand it. But basically, since 2001, when there was the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks, I've basically been alienated with zero friends. There was one girl I sort of dated in Jackson Hole for about a month. And other than that, I haven't really dated any women, no girlfriends, no friends that were girls, and guys alienated me. I told a gay friend of mine in an email that if I would have been gay, I would have probably been very successful, because I would have at least been able to connect to people and get something accomplished. Because I've come up with a ton of business plans and ideas and things like that, and been able to social network or networking or anything like that, but I have been unable to get anything done. Anytime I meet anybody, it's like I lose touch with them. Almost it's almost laughable. It seems like a conspiracy. I know that's paranoia, which is crazy, but it seems like a conspiracy that I called it passively stalked. Um, and I was passively stalked by the media, and I was passively stalked by people. And it's like they realize who I am, and it's like I'm cupped in the BubbleBoy. That's how I feel half the time. And people know where I am and keep me within these realms. And wasting time seems to be the key parameters. And motives. World domination by the economic superpower. Keep perpetuation. Change is dangerous, and they might have seen me as a threat to change because of a connectivity to the Catholic world. The Louisiana connections to Catholic world and the Protestant Catholic War going on in the United States. I think there was a big Red Scare about the Catholics uniting, forming a new Holy Roman Empire, that sort of thing. So that's motive for sabotage, because that's cards that I could have figured out to play, which I did figure out. Um, Economic superpower machine growth. In this world, there are economic superpowers, and there's the G20, and they create these economic war machines, and it's almost impossible for most of the world to compete. And then they're racing, and you can't even compete racing. So economies of scale and um, just with so much money to spend, they buy everything, and it's just an impossibility to. And it's this culmination that could be part of the motivation is that when the World Trade Centers went down, the economic war, the United States really declared economic war, turned predatory on the rest of the world. It's secretly, and nobody talks about it. The media has a bunch of half truths. The media buries a lot of reality, and they don't report that there's predatory economic war going on. And in one of my books that I'm trying to write, Sun Tzu's The Art of Modern War, I talk about predatory economic war being more dangerous than military war, because it, it you can control a lot more of control a lot of these nations through economic means almost more effectively than having to move troops and destroy them with military weaponry. So the media buries this sort of economic predatory war. And the revolutionary holy media, that's part of my Sun Tzu's of Art of Modern War book. The media has turned into the new religion because they espouse parts of the truth, even though they don't espouse all of the truths. They neglect a lot of what's going on out there in order to keep the party raging, keep the global domination aspirations happening. So there's the big picture is not it's not really a big picture scenario, and so it gives me a lot of credibility in my dissection of society on the internet, even though most people are oblivious because I don't have any followers or anything like that. So it gives me plenty of things to comment on and try to figure out of what's going on. But the economic superpowers or one big thing that the media never mentions, because they have most of the global media worships the United States media because it has created such a it undermined it created a revolutionary sentiment. They've seized control from the white male supremacy that was happening during up until the hippie revolution, and it's transitioned into being under the control of the left wing, but it's actually spun off because of there's a cold civil war going on between the left and the right. And so a lot of the government itself is spun off onto a separate entity, and the only concern seems to be perpetuation of existence. And even though the nation is literally insane because of the bipolar political party extreme hate, um, manic episodes, and drunk on superpower. And so the nation is literally insane, not to mention the huge debt crisis. Perpetuation seems to be the only major motivation of the spin-off of the government. It seems to be a separate entity going back and forth, depending on what party's in power. It's just an asinine system, especially since there is no global leadership and nobody's steering the planet, and most of the world follows the superpowers examples, and this is a horrible example to lead upon. I'm being a centrist, think both sides are crazy, and I criticize the extremism on both sides. So, the diversity dangers, it jeopardizes the stability. I think the media is one of the things the media has been trying to do is acclimate the especially the youth to diversity in order to, because of the economic system has to be validated because it's such a 25%. And in order to maintain system supremacy, you've got to justify the existence of the system. But they screwed Europe up. Europe screwed up, and so now it's diverse, and so they're going to have future problems. So that saves a lot of face. That helps the United States tremendously in their war against Europe. Let's see. Underutilized resources. That goes back to the Catholic world being this big mass glob, and this goes back to the LouisIAna Renaissance. Louisiana could have been a leader of Latin America, and I've come up with ideas and ways for it to turn into a leader from Latin America in order to help Latin America grow and develop. But the Catholic world is this mass. It's got a huge spiritual body. It's got all these huge cathedrals and opulence that hypnotizes the masses to think they're in good state. And then the United States tricks the Catholic world because it's got a Supreme Court with 6 Catholics on it. It's got a Catholic president, but they do not care about the Catholic world at all. They care about the United States first and foremost. And that's the difference. These politicians of the Catholic world, there's no big picture leadership. Right? So I call it for a relaunching of the new Holy Roman Empire. And there being some leaders, a group of leaders, or economic trade bloc would help. There's all sorts of things you could do, but that's something that the United States sees as a competitive threat to their master domination. So of course I was sabotaged. That's one of the possible motives for my sabotage and captivity, is to hinder the Catholic progress. But the Catholics are a huge underutilized resource, a massive, and nobody's doing anything about it. And I've tried, and hopefully I can help elevate Louisiana, utilizing their Catholic ties. But there is a war going on in Louisiana between the Protestants and the Catholic. It goes back to my mother being Protestant English, my father being French Catholic and Jewish father. And the Jewish people have sided with the Americans, so they've turned against the Louisiana. So now it's actually the Jews are siding with the Protestants, and the Catholics are oblivious and brain dead, and they don't really don't lift a finger or do anything. They're oblivious, like I said. And I think it's going to haunt them because they're on the menu, in my estimation. I think the United States is trying to eat the Catholic world in order to be bigger, to fight China, in my estimation. That's one of my theories. So, where to go from here? Let's see. So I've covered a bunch of everything already. That was quick. Centrism. I'm centrism. Trying to keep walk the straight and narrow line like the drunk cops make you do. Whereas the rest of the nation seems to be varied between. I'm actually in favor of nonpartisan. I think the party system is one of the huge. There's a lot of major problems in the world right now, and I think parties have a lot to do with it. It all goes back to mob rule. Mob, and there's been throughout history great mob people, great thinkers have talked about how the mob never trusts the mob mentality. It's dangerous and it's volatile and it's not very accurate. And that's what's going on now. It's mob rule going on. There is no balance of power. The European royals have decided not to do anything because they're worried about getting ousted, I guess. In some parts of the world, there's still some centrist, authoritative leadership that keeps their hands solid on the wheel, that are in control, even though they use pretty harsh methods, which is necessary because of the revolutionary sentiment of the media trying to, so they can be manipulated and indoctrinated into the economic system to be branded and butchered for exploitation and controlled by. There's different ways of control. The notion of freedom under the free system, there's plenty of ways to control when you set the parameters of thought. That's one of the reasons that the big picture leadership thought parameters don't exist. There's a very narrow window of thought going on. So they try to keep the masses herded in these chutes, as you would. So let me see. I think I'm about to call this a quick one. Called Civil War, Diversity Dangers, Economic Superpowers, Rigged Life, my horrible rigged life where I'm trapped here, unable to, blacklisted by the New York and LA talent agents. That's the Jews professing their undying loyalty to George Bush, who's the smartest in the world, Bush League, J.R. Ewing. And Rams went to Hughes and Rams, and the Rams went to LA as a bribe, and they even won a Super Bowl to keep me buried in laughable joke conspiracy comedy. So I guess that'll about do it.